So I get it. Katsu has not had an overwhelming top cut presence at any of the recent events, with the exception, of course, of putting Tam, who piloted Katsu to the top table, and calling Phuket. But guess what? In a skill game like Flesh and Blood, the top tier meta is not what you see at your locals. It's very different. And to that end, I'm going to tell you why I think Katsu is absolutely freaking terrifying at the Armory level. And that's right, I'll then fan the flame and give you my low brain power deck list. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. And hey, happy Destiny Friday, especially to all my weekend warriors out there who are going out swinging or stabbing or clubbing or hammering or whatever it may be this weekend as you go out. But what I want to talk about today specifically is Katsu. And yes, this conversation is targeted mostly towards, your weekend warriors and such going out to your Armory level. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, I still think he's really scary. And I think that the Katsu loyalists, or at least the math loyalists, or whatever you want to call it, have gotten him to a really good spot in Classic Constructed. And I think he's, again, I don't want to use the word terrifying too much, but I think he's in a really good spot at your local level. Now, what exactly do I mean by that versus the top 8 and all that? Well, there's a very reasonable distinction there. So he had, if we pull up the PTLA data, it was like a 40-some% conversion rate. That's, respectable, but not, if you're looking at the raw data, you're like, oh, well, there's heroes that are better than that. Those are the heroes I should play. And I mean, fair enough, right? But one very specific thing that I think distinguishes Katsu in this conversation is Katsu, and specifically combo Katsu, right? I don't know why you wouldn't play him that way, because like the deck, 95% of the deck builds itself these days, right? The gust waves and all that sort of stuff. He's very hard to block. Right. And by that, I don't mean it's hard to block him out. I mean, we can lay cards down on the table all day long, right? But blocking him correctly and be able to come back and actually do something to him and not just hoping you fatigue, and you can't fatigue him because he has 2 Kodachis on board. There's a lot of real relevant threats there to someone who doesn't necessarily have the perfect game plan, the perfect repped 1,000-time game plan into Katsu. And I think that's more my point tonight is Katsu's pretty freaking good into the field at large, right? And not necessarily a competitive meta-tuned field, but the field at large, which I think fits into your Armory, okay? So with all that said and kind of explaining that, yes, I realize we're 3 minutes down the road. What I wanted to do was go ahead and walk you through, kind of what's made Katsu different. There's 2 things. First, the meta itself changes. Again, remember, folks chase the top tier deck lists, okay? But you need to remember that the folks chasing the top tier deck list just because it's on a website are not necessarily the ones who know how to play that the best. That's just sorry, you can dislike me if you want, but that's true. And then the other part is he picked up a pretty good tool in Ancestor Harmony. Now, Ancestor Harmony is not like broken or anything like that, but it's really, really, really good with, I think, the way that I've built the deck. Again, I'm not saying I have the bestest deck. I actually have a lower power, not lower power, but I have a more streamlined deck to make it a little easier to play for someone like me who doesn't know all the ins and outs and the one-ofs and all that sort of stuff, okay? So let's go ahead and get into said deck. So what I have across the screen right now, and Katsu's of course in front, so we'll make him go away. What I have right now, and yes, the link is below, I have my recommended Katsu deck. Okay, so I have here this part builds itself, right? We have breaking scales, we have the boots, we have 2 harmonized Kodachis to make sense. We have the cross strap that is for a free surging strike. It's basically what you're using it for. Then we have Mask of Momentum. So Mask of Momentum is, not only the OG, it's not only the OG piece, but it really creates a lot of problems again / concerns in terms of blocking. And then, let's go ahead and skip ahead into the first card listed there, just because the alphabet works in our advantage for this point, Ancestral Empowerment. Right? Ancestral Empowerment with Mask Momentum, whether you're Fi, whether you're Katsu, whether you're whomever, one of the gosh darn dirtiest plays in all of Flesh and Blood, right? They block you out, and you just come out for one on the top. You draw a card to backfill the card you just played, and then you trigger your mask, and you get another one. So freaking frustrating. So frustrating, but so good. All right. So we go into Be Like Water. So I'm specifically playing 2 of these. Now, I do want to note, I want to give a huge thank you to Archer Taylor, Portland boy, Portland native, went down to PTLA, provided their list to me. This is not a copy of their list. I want to be very clear. I've taken this and I've kind of made it, in my opinion, again, when I looked at it, I was like, I don't understand all of these little things. I'm going to make it more straightforward for myself so that I can just play it with less counting. That's where this deck came from, right? But again, this is from Archer Taylor's Shell, so I want to give a shout out to them. Okay, so what I did is on Be Like Water, I actually decreased theirs from 1. But this is kind of the point of this is it's another Surging, right? Or some other piece in your combo. But you need to remember on this card specifically, it's a 3. So it makes it a lot easier to block, but it's a 0 go again. It's not necessarily a bad thing for them to throw a card at that, because in today's day and age, especially with a lot of the heroes we're seeing in the meta right now, which is kind of to the point of where I'm going with this, sucking cards out of their hand is a big deal, right? You look at someone like a Kayo, like I'm sure none of you see Kayo at your armories these days, right? Someone like a Kayo sucking out a block is kind of a big deal versus a Kayo. Because maybe they've got, statistically, they probably got like 1 no block in their hand, and like one of their blocks is probably a yellow, right? So anyway, you see where I'm going with that. Okay, now one I added on my own is Bittering Thorns. I just functionally think this card is good. I want to be very clear, this card is RTT only. It may be hard for you out there to get Bittering Thorns. You can very easily replace this with Leg Tap. It is not a 1-to-1 in terms of the on hit and forcing that, because they'll probably bleed on the, right? They'll bleed in like a point, or maybe they'll take all 4, whatever, I don't know. Or I don't know on the case by case, right? But Bittering Thorns, they really want to block, might even throw armor at this. Whereas like Leg Tap, they're probably not, because they're going to know that you're not, playing Rising Knee or something like that. But actually, to be fair, if you are going to play Leg Tap, maybe you do throw in Rising Knee as a blue, right? Why not? That's actually fair. Okay, either way, I'm playing Bittering Thorns. Okay, then we go into Bonds. Okay, Bonds, just a 6 of for red-yellow. Descendant Gust Wave, 6 of red-yellow. I don't want to blow through these. These are huge pieces. I mean, look at this card, right? It's a 0 for 4 with Go Again. Obviously, following Descendant, or not Descendant, sorry, Surging. It's crazy, right? You look at Bonds, right? If it follows a Gust Wave, card comes in for free. Okay. I am mainboarding Flick Flack. If you go look at this deck on the whole, there's been a lot of Katsu decks out there kind of in the post-Outsiders days that were running the full Katsu package. And by that, I mean, they were doing the Lord of Wind package and all that sort of stuff. Mugenshi, Lord of Wind. I have opted instead, I am running the 100 Winds package. I just like that because they're all fundamentally combo. Now, one of the drawbacks of 100 Winds is it's only a 2 block, but again, when you then put in the Flick Flack, it's a 4 block, and they're always on board, right? It's the 100 Winds is the only chain start combo starter. It's the only combo starter that has combo, so that's kind of cool because it combos into itself. So yes, it has a 2 to make up for that, but then they're always on board with Flick Flack. It's also a yellow 0, Kodachis, you get it, okay? And I'm running 6 Surgings, red-yellow. Whelming Gust Wave is red and blue in this case. Again, this is another one that follows Surging. You've got 2 Be Like Waters again. That's the 1. Okay, you can do the math in terms of how you're planning your Kodachi strikes on that one. Art of War. Yes, we are running Art of War. It's really good. Just run it with ninjas. That's pretty much it. Right now, in terms of Ancestor Harmony, why, I talked about how this card's pretty great. Why 2 of them? I did not go into the full math, right? Usually I have like 3-4 binder pages and stuff when I'm doing this on the pitches and all that. I didn't go into the full math on this one. My instincts just told me that running this as a 3 of was overkill. Now, it does block for 3, which is actually pretty nice. But when I really looked at, basically what it boiled down to for me was a trade-off between a couple of cards. Okay, you're looking at the number, right? Again, so we're running, not again, but we're running 13 blues in this, which is a little low profile. I think most decks are running 14. That's largely because when I go look at my inventory, which we'll get to in a second, I have some blues down there as well, right? But I'm comfortable running 13 with the way that I'm running this profile, knowing that I'm generally only swinging Kodachi maybe once just to kind of soften up, get something in there, screw with blocking, okay? But what I was really competing with was, I have Winds of Eternity here, which ends the 100 wins line. Do I run 3 Winds of Eternity? Where do I find the slot? So I maybe only run 2 Dishonor, and then you realize that what you want to do is get Dishonor in the discard, so you can do the thing with bonds and all that. You want 3 Dishonors, sold there. So that just led me down the path to only having 2 Ancestrals. I know that I kind of went around about there, but I do think 2 Ancestrals is the right number. If you really look at the number of combos we have in here, remember Surging's not combo, Be Like Water's not combo, Flick Flack's not combo, obviously your Tricky Tricks are not combo. But by and large, the rest of it has that. So I think Flick Flack's pretty well positioned for you to do what you need to do. And again, remember, like Dishonor, you can block with Dishonor and then put it in, and you can do the thing with Gust Wave. Bonds. With Bonds. Okay. All right, now let's go to the inventory. This is where as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of the Katsu deck, if we're being honest with ourselves, kind of builds itself to a certain extent, right? I think that's a fair statement. I mean, you're trying to do, when you're starting to look at the combo lines, you're like, well, I need this, and then I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and it builds itself, right? Now, in terms of, do I need 3, do I need 2, blah, blah, I get it. There's a lot there. But then when you get into the inventory, that's where I think the finesse comes in, okay? So I have landed on, I was actually going back and forth on Command and Conquer, whether that should actually be down and dirty. The issue I got into, not really the issue, but where I landed on this was if I ever got in the point where I had down and dirty in my hand, because generally what you want to do with down and dirty is arsenal it for the popper. And that was kind of the issue, was I could only really ever use down and dirty as a popper, whereas Command and Conquer is just functionally good. So I very much acknowledge that jacks the price of this deck up, right? So you can definitely do other things there. But Command and Conquer was just functionally felt right to me. I am running 3 Sink Belows in sideboard for, the matchups, the matchups you need them for, right? Now, where I, again, deviated from some other lists I've seen out there, specifically Archers, is I'm running 2 copies of Tenacity, okay, and I'm not running Salt the Wound. Now, there's a very real reason I'm doing this. I have not shot the video yet. I might actually shoot it directly after this, but it will be going up within the next week. I can commit to that, on Salt the Wound versus Tenacity. There's a very real reason when running the 2 Kodachis why I'm running Tenacity instead of Salt the Wound, and I understand that sounds not the right way, but there has to be a thing where they block Mask, right? And what you can do is you can force cards to come on the chain because you have Mask, and then all of a sudden you're running your combo line. It forces the blocks, and a lot of times when you're coming in with that, they'll throw armor on that, and generally when they throw armor to block a 3, well, that's more than 1. So I did a lot of iterations on this. I'm pretty certain that Tenacity is the right play. Again, I get it. If you're running up against no block or something, Salt, great. Give me credit for all the hits. But by and large, if you time with the assumption that you're running Mask and Momentum, with your Kodachis timed in the correct position, I think you can force more blocks and more value out of Tenacity. That's my take on it. That's why I'm running that. Okay. Also running That All You Got because I believe that at the Armory level right now, between Axe Dorinthea, between Katsu, between Ash Wings and Small Dragons, I think the value off That All You Got right now is pretty crazy high. I think putting this in your sideboard is the right call. I also have Concealed Blade to a certain extent. No, I'm not running Flick Knives, right? I get it. This is also a blue 0 for 3. Wizards are a thing that helps us there for more blues. It's a block, and by 0/3, it's obvious. I mean, I blue 0, block 3. You know what I mean? Blocks 3, and it can come over for 1 in the right situation, which, we already talked about that for Ancestral. Again, it doesn't draw you the card. I still think this is good. This is one of my favorite cards. Actually, I was kind of torn up to not run Stab Wound in this. A, there wasn't room. B, I don't think it's quite right, like the Fly play. And again, you don't have Flick Knives. Okay. We then have Warmonger's Diplomacy. I have this as a 2 of. This is the silver bullet, speaks for itself. Then Arcane Lantern. I think going 1 Kodachi Arcane Lantern's the right play in the Wizard matchup. We then have the gloves and the flippers. Flippers is kind of an auto-clued in Ninja these days. So that is my list overall. Like I said, the reason that I prefer 100 wins over the Lord of Wind line is just, I did say earlier that it was a combo thing. They actually do the combo count. It actually works out to be probably relatively the same, backfilling in some blues. I get it. But I really like the fact that 100 wins can just functionally play on its own. And it's also a free line. Like the whole line is free. So from like a 2-card hand, you could threaten stuff, right? Or an arsenal. You get it, right? I just think it's more functional in kind of a pinch situation, despite the fact that they're 2s. That's why I'm running the Flick Flack. Anyway, that's the logic there. So that's my list overall. Run it, have fun with it. But as I mentioned, I think it's really well positioned within the Armory because there's just so many block decisions overall. And I think unless you've run up this against this deck a bajillion times with your specific matchup, I think it's really hard to figure out what to do. So I think that this deck's going to absolutely rip up Armories over the next couple of months, weeks maybe at the pace we're going these days, to be fair. I get it. But I think it's going to do very well. So anyway, that's my piece. Happy Fab Friday, and go Commando.